Moon.exe is my favorite part of Secret of the Mimic.
Oh my god.
And is probably the thing that's going to keep the community guessing and arguing for the next few years as we await the inevitable security breach 2. My name is Gibby and welcome to the Horror Homestead. Today we're going to solve Moon. On all the computers you can find throughout Secret of the Mimic is the option to run a program called Moon.exe. What made him this way? What is the attraction? What keeps us fascinated? This is the story of this f***ing thing. The thing that's the mascot of Moon.exe is a character called Nightlight. The community calls him Sleepy Moon, but we see on blueprints and in the game's files that he goes by the name Nightlight. This character is found in the basement, guarding David's ball, arguably the hardest collectible to get in the game. There's a connection between the Moon.exe moon and Nightlight that will become apparent as we move forward in our investigation. I should probably say out loud what the video is about. This video is going to actually solve Moon.exe, and the symbolism and lore contained within Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic. I'm also going to trick you into learning some history, so there's that too. I hope you've watched my first 2 videos in this series, the story of Arnold and the story of Edwin, because otherwise this video will be confusing. But here's a quick recap. Edwin marries Fiona, has a son named David. He loves this little tiger dude. Fiona dies in the Fall Fest fire. Edwin builds a robot called the Mimic to be a babysitter for David. The Mimic starts to act like Fiona. Edwin treats it as his wife. The jury is still out on to what extent he treated it as his wife. On David's 5th birthday, he dies. FionaBot convinces Edwin to build another David, so she copies her programming to create M2 or Mimic 2. Edwin builds a body for the Mimic 2 program, but it doesn't work for some reason. The Mimic copies David, but doesn't achieve full sapience. Edwin tells FionaBot to go away because she's not the real Fiona, she's just a robot. He tricked himself into thinking it was his wife. And another David wouldn't be the real David. David is gone. Little does Edwin know that David isn't gone, he's a ghost wandering the building in the form of a white tiger suit mascot. He's this game's Golden Freddy, and he can teleport and mentally project himself into the minds of the people around him. We don't know what happens to FionaBot, but we know that her consciousness ends up in this giant computer, which is based on the Whopper from the movie War Games, which was this giant supercomputer tasked with running endless simulations of World War III. It was also named after its creator's son who died in a car crash. I wonder if that's important. Edwin then decides, and we don't know why, but he decides to start working on M2 again. But then he decides to stop again. After it mimicked David, he decided that he wanted to beat it up, so he took its legs away. Now there's an angry robot imbued with Edwin's agony over losing David, as well as M1's actual code, and Edwin's anger. Edwin hurts himself in an explosion testing some sort of new power source. He asks M2 for help.
M2, respond. Emergency.
M2 quotes Edwin's own words to David back at him, fixes his own legs, and presumably leaves Edwin to die.
Oh, can't right now, buddy. We can do something fun tomorrow. I promise. Ask your mom if she's not busy. You know, speaking of legs, what do you think? I just finished mine.
He then starts chilling in the empty factory. He follows his program and wears mascot suits and takes on their personas, but with murderous intent. The story's pretty straightforward when all the pieces are together, but all of the pieces aren't together. We have 2 giant gaps in time. We don't know how M1 gained sapience, and we don't know what happened to M1 after Edwin told it to go away, you stupid dumb animal. But we do have 2 puzzle pieces here. We don't know where they fit, so let's shove them together. We don't know what's in Nightlight in the basement. We can theorize based on text logs found in the game that it's been down there since before the last human employee left the factory. So it's not M2 or Edwin, so it's M1. This is where M1 went when Edwin told it to go away, you stupid dumb animal. But it doesn't sound like M2 does when it's stomping around. That's right, viewer who's paying attention, but may I counter with, the M2 that's stomping around built his own legs. So maybe they're heavier or less good than M1's. M1 is Edwin's perfect original creation, stomping around the basement in the persona of Nightlight, as it's programmed to do, singing lullabies.
Lullaby and good night, with roses bed light, with lilies o'erspread, his baby's wee bed. Lay thee down now and rest, May thy slumber be blessed. Lay thee down now and rest. May thy slumber be blessed.
Now keep in mind, M1 is not Fiona. M1 is a program made to learn things, to mimic things, to take on the persona of whatever costume it wears, and to take care of David. I'm going to refer to the unpossessed, non-sapient, unfionized version of M1 as the babysitter. It's a robot with Edwin's programming. As the babysitter, I fully believe one of its functions would have been to put David to bed, to sing him lullabies and sit in the corner as his nightlight. That's what M1 Babysitter is doing during the night. David has a drawing of the Nightlight character with the word fun written on it in his room, and I think that M1 took on the persona of Nightlight for a particular reason. Down in the basement, along with Nightlight and David's ball, we can find this note. Memory error, detail report. We were expecting. There were complications. Consciousness was lost for an undetermined time. Once I woke, we were all together and happy. A family. But something was different. I felt wrong somehow. Was I me? I would never sleep again. Corrupted file suspected. Please advise. I think this note was written by M2 during one of the failures to copy David. We get consistent reminders throughout the game that Edwin was not able to have M2 mimic David, get possessed by David, the way that M1 was possessed by Fiona. I think this note was written by an unfully formed M2. Because M2 was born of the programming of M1, literally copied from it, it would remember being Fiona. M1 would have thought that M2 would be its child, so we were expecting a child. Makes sense if she was copying her programming and Edwin was altering the code. There were complications. It kept not working. Consciousness was lost for an undetermined time. This is M1 copying itself into M2. It awakes as a copy of itself, as David, all together and happy. A Fiona bot, a David bot, and Edwin. But something was different. I felt wrong somehow. It was not fully David, and it partially remembered being Fiona, which is a problem. They don't want David bot to remember being Fiona bot even if it was born of her code. Was I me? I would never sleep again. Corrupted file suspected, please advise. My guess is that Edwin's response to this corrupted file was to scrap it and start over. So if M2 trying to become David doesn't want to sleep again, and M1 sees it as David and knows its job is to put him to sleep, it makes sense that the babysitter persona would wear the Nightlight mascot suit to try to put David to sleep. We'll talk about this more when we discuss Moon.exe. After David dies, after many failed attempts to recreate him using M2, Edwin didn't want reminders of him anymore in the house. He boarded up his bedroom, shoved Nightlight and his ball in the basement, and told M1 Fiona to get lost. You stupid dumb animal. Now, we've seen in FNAF a few different kinds of possessions or hauntings before. You have things brought to life by General Remnant, like the mini-arenas in Sister Location. They seem to share none of the humanity of the human soul that's animating them. It's likely that only a tiny portion of soul, likely different souls mixed together, is what's powering them. Then you have things brought to life by one person's remnant, so like Chica in FNAF 1 is animated by Susie's remnant. In the week before, Ralph sings Happy Birthday, Susie, and Chica calms down. Even though Chica likely doesn't remember being Susie, doesn't have her memories or her personality traits, there still is a continuity between Susie and Chica. This does not mean Susie would have killed people the way Chica does, and I've never seen Chica petting a dog, but Chica is, still to some extent, Susie. Then you have animatronics brought to life by one person's remnant that actually has attributes of that person. So, Baby and the puppet both seem to have knowledge of their human lives. Baby considers Mike to be her brother, and knows that Springtrap is her daddy. The puppet, especially later in the timeline, seems to be
very aware
and act the way that Charlie would act.
No one was there to lift you up into their arms, the way you lifted others into yours. And then, what became of you? I should have known you wouldn't be content to disappear. Not my daughter.
And then Springtrap is just a fully possessed William Afton, evil machinations, British accent, ego, all of that. Although he is still limited by the programming of the animatronic. For example, he has to follow the sound of children because Springlock suits are designed to stay where the party is. So here's the thing. I do think that M1 was haunted, possessed, animated, what have you, by Fiona. The real one. I cover this in my Story of Edwin video. But that does not mean that she's Fiona's ghost piloting a mech suit. For one, she's inhabiting a body with its own programming and personality. Again, calling that the babysitter. She's also limited by the functionality of the robot. When Fiona talks to Edwin about David's death, she goes,
Edwin, it doesn't make sense. It's terrible, and there's no logic behind it. It happened, and you have to deal with it. You did it before. We can fix things together. I am here to help.
It's not logical sounds like a robot to me more than a mother. So Fiona the person and Babysitter the program are inside of M1. M1's programming gets copied to create M2. Fiona is then removed from M1, leaving just the babysitter behind. Fiona is put into a computer for some reason, and M1 is left to sit in the basement and feel bad about itself. It inhabits the nightlight suit to try to put David to sleep, and wanders around for years, singing lullabies for a child who's no longer there. But the important part is, Nightlight is the character who wants David to go to bed, and was present in M1's code before it was copied to create M2, and thus is still present within M2. So what is Moon.exe? Moon.exe is an in-universe diegetic parser adventure game where the player solves some item inventory puzzles in a strange fantasy world, gets teleported to Maurice Costume Manor, makes their way up to David's room, and then opens the closet to find a strange machine. This upgrades their data diver in the real world so they can gain glitched permissions to gain access to an alternate ending, where you go to David's real room, and M2 comes out of the closet. The point of the game is to place blocks with David's name, his white tiger toy, and his ball into these chests. I believe the game is about reconstructing David to have him fully possess M2. You're placing his soul, which is in the white tiger, his memories or sense of identity, which are in the blocks, and the agony Edwin felt over his loss, the ball, in his room. This is give gifts, give life. Or give tiger, give possession. But that leaves a lot of questions. Who is the protagonist of Moon.exe? Who made the game? Who are the strange figures found throughout, like the old woman, or the moon itself? Well, after all this preamble, let's get to solving Moon.exe for real. .exe is a file extension for an executable file. Basically, a program. Back in my day, every program ended with .exe on a desktop, but in modern times that part of the program name is hidden. .exe is now just used as a callback to 20th century computer terminology, to remind us that we are in fact playing a video game set in the 1970s. So while we might call this Moon.exe, because just calling it Moon is confusing, please note that in universe, the program is just called Moon. A character calling this Moon.exe in universe would be as silly as us calling the game Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic.exe in real life. So, what is Moon? Like I said earlier, Moon is a parser-driven graphical adventure game. Oh god, okay, so Pong is released in 1972 as the first video game that matters. It's pretty cool. 1977, the Atari 2600 releases with cartridges, and we have games that look like this.
Wow!
Released on PC in 1977 was the game Zork, known as the first really successful text-based adventure game. One of my college professors mentioned Zork once, and I gave the smallest nod of recognition, and then he called me out in front of the class all excited that I knew what Zork was, and I didn't have the heart to tell him that I only knew about it because it's an Easter egg in Call of Duty Black Ops. Anyway, Zork is a game where you can type in actions and the game describes what happens. It's a text-based adventure game. West of house. You're standing in an open field west of a white house with a boarded front door. There's a small mailbox here. Go north. North of house. You are facing the north side of a white house. There is no door here. All the windows are boarded up. To the north, a narrow path winds through the trees. Go to trees. You can't see any trees here. That is false. Go down path. You can't do that. Go to window. It's here. Open. What do you want to open? Open window. The windows are boarded and can't be open. Remove boards. The boards are securely fastened. Break boards. What do you want to break the boards with? Hammer. I don't know the word hammer. Break boards with face. I don't know the word face. Go to front door of house on south side. Use the word south in a way I don't understand. Go south. The windows are all boarded. Return to mailbox. I don't know the word return. Mailbox. There's no verb in that sentence. Cry. I don't know the word cry. Zork, at your service. In 1980, the company that would become the groundbreaking Sierra Online released Mystery House. Developed by Ken and Roberta Williams of King's Quest fame, it's a text adventure game, but with pictures. The first of its kind. This is what Moon is mimicking. Bad word choice. This is what Moon is homaging. The way that Princess Quest is The Legend of Zelda, Moon is Mystery House. In a real graphical adventure game, you would have to use the keyboard to type things like open window, take mask, etc. That's what a parser game is. Parser games, like King's Quest, evolved into point-and-click games like LucasArts' Monkey Island, or my personal favorite, The Dig, where actions are tied to mouse clicks, which were then homaged in such modern titles as Five Nights at Freddy's Into the Pit. They also evolved into games like Myst, which forgo text but still use the point-and-click interface. But Steel Wool allows us to play Moon with just these little drop-down options. I think in-universe, were Arnold to play this game, it would be parser-based. It's just using these drop-down options for the sake of us, the real player. That's why, despite a handful of people, myself included, referring to Moon.exe as being like Zork or Myst, a better comparison is Mystery House. So, Moon starts you off in a mysterious house. Oh boy. At first there's little to do besides being killed by the monster in the closet, but a giant moon comes and puts you to bed. The thing pulls you to the moon, who screams, "Back to bed," everything fades to black, restart. If you try to sleep in the bed, your character says, "You don't want to go to bed. Never again." Okay, so we're already presented with a few mysterious elements in this mystery house. Who are we? What is our motivation? Why don't we want to go to bed? And who is the moon? This is FNAF, where minigames always tell more than what's just being directly presented in the game itself. I personally created a theory called Arcade Theory, which I have a whole video on, and it might be important context, in which I claim that the minigames throughout the series are reflections of things that occur in the FNAF afterlife. FNAF World directly states this, with the line, "Everything that happens out there has an effect here." We also know that some of the arcade games we play, like Mangle's Quest, are real in-universe arcade games. So the basic idea is that the agony from real-world events, like William killing Charlie, can attach not only to the animatronics, but also to video game arcade cabinets housed within Freddy's, causing a real event, like William stabbing Charlie, to be depicted in a real video game arcade machine, like Take Cake to the Children. This means that no matter what Moon is, whatever it's supposed to be, the agony of the Murray family and the events that happen in the Costume Manor ripple into the video game's programming and affect what is depicted in the game. This isn't really a theory, it's directly shown to us in Secret of the Mimic, given that when you find a collectible in the main game and you store it in your inventory, it appears in Moon as a usable item. You can, and I'm sure people will, argue that this is non-diegetic, it's just how the game is choosing to deal with getting collectibles, but my overall theory is to state that, no, it is literal. To progress in Moon, you need the agony from these real-world items to affect the game world, which is how this weird video game can depict obvious parallels to real characters like Edwin, Fiona, and David, because their essence is within the agony of the items you're collecting and adding to the system. Wait, what's Agony again?
Horrible things have happened with this.
Agony is what many people believe real cursed or haunted items to have. A knife that killed someone? Now it's haunted and evil because it killed someone. An abandoned asylum where a bunch of people got tortured and were given lobotomies and then died? Haunted. In the FNAF books, we're given the example of a mirror that reflected a father butchering his whole family, so that agony is stored within the mirror itself. I don't think it would be controversial to say that David's ball would have the agony of his death inside it, no matter how you think he died. My current theory is that agony permeates basically the entire costume manor. We can theorize that at least 2 employees have died there, one incinerated and one who starved to death. Hey, I can't get the incinerator up and running. The chutes are getting clogged again. Gary, I finally found the missing piece of this stupid power device. Just gotta head over there and turn the power on. I'll check in soon. Has anyone seen Gary? Edwin's old inventions are also recycled by melting them down and forming them into new machines, meaning any agony present in any of them is distributed into all of them.
I'm talking about broken Midway games, costumes, computer and television parts. Those useless things are then used to create new Midway games, costumes, and technologies.
It's also strongly implied that the orange goo we see powering the facility is the melted machinery, and thus, the building is literally powered by agony-infused liquid as some sort of electricity conduit or something. In other words, the building's haunted, yo. So when I say something like, putting objects found in the factory into the inventory system by putting them in this machine which then makes them appear on Moon by infusing Moon with agony, I hope you're following my train of thought. Okay, so we're in this mysterious bedroom. We know it can't be David's bedroom, we'll see that later. We don't want to go to bed, there's drawings on the wall. The bed screen shows a mobile over our head, and assuming Arnold has collected it, a rodeo hat. Trying to wear it leads to the description, a Deadeye Roxy rodeo hat. You wore this until it fell apart. Everyone loves Roxy. Here is where the theory starts to take form. This rodeo hat is old. Roxy having a Western theme predates her and Foxy's contemporary pirate theme, and likely aligned with the popularity of cowboys on TV in the 1950s. There's a poster of a flower on the wall. These are enough for myself and other theorists to conclude what should have been obvious from the start. The person we're playing as is Fiona. This is a girl's room, a girl who grew up in the 1950s. This is a memory of her childhood bedroom. Here's the theory. We know that M2, the program that's inside the Mimic as it stalks through the factory, started as a copy of Fiona Bot's programming. It makes sense to me, and other theorists, that Moon.exe is the journey M2's consciousness went on from its creation as a copy of M1 to the moment David fully possesses the Endo at the end of the game. This is the battle going on in its consciousness, starting as a jumble of many different personas, eventually emerging as David. So as we go through Moon, keep in mind we are experiencing the narrative at 2 points in time. M2's journey from its creation until the end of the game, and the lives of Fiona, Edwin, and David, and the people whose agony are influencing its programming. Also, please note, I know it's a popular theory that Princess Quest is about Cassidy, and people like to point out the surface-level similarities between Moon and Midnight Motorist, but I strongly feel like none of these current lore dump minigames are in relation to the old lore. Princess Quest is about Vanessa, because Help Wanted is about Vanessa. Moon is about the Murrays, because Secret of the Mimic is about the Murrays. The door in Moon is barred from the other side. This is not like the door in Midnight Motorist, which is locked from the inside. A character escapes out a window. Children escaping through windows is a very common trope. And in Moon, we don't smash the window. This game is about the Murrays and nothing else. When we call someone on the toy phone and a child that's crying picks up, that's not the FNAF 4's crying child, it's David Murray, who cries in this game the way that all dead children in the series are depicted as crying. We're gonna go forward with the knowledge that this game is about the Murrays and not the Aftons, as much as I know people want it to be. Okay, so we're in Fiona's childhood room, but it's after David's death. If we use the phone on the desk, we hear David speaking. A toy phone rings. A child cries softly on the other end. He never sees me. Edwin didn't pay attention to David in life, and he doesn't see his presence in death. I think it's important that this call is here in the first room, as uniting with David is what we do in the final screen of the game. This is the start of our journey, and that's the end. Also on this screen is a note that says, "Dear Moon, can you bring back the sun?" Another reference to the David persona coming to full consciousness at the end. As we will see as we go, the sun is not just a symbol of Fiona, it's a symbol of David. It also puts us in the shoes of every FNAF protagonist whose story starts with someone talking to them over the phone. If we look at the toy chest, we can find the key to the window, but leaving the room results in Moon catching you and putting you to bed. If we go in the closet, we get attacked by a monster. But if we found the hedgehog mask as Arnold in the real world, the monster in the closet is wearing it, so you can take it and then go out the window. Okay, so the Moon in Moon wants to put you to bed, the thing that you don't want to have happen. M2's programming started as a copy of M1, and thus houses the babysitter and Fiona. The character Moon, capital M-O-O-N Moon, who looks like Nightlight, is the babysitter programming trying to put David to bed. It's literally the programming of the game, without the agony from the real-world items, without the human spirits interfering. The only thing you can do in this game is go to bed, without any agony or human consciousnesses. The only thing in the Mimic was the babysitter programming. We become less babysitter and more Fiona, and then more David. The more agonized objects from the real world are inserted into the game. The more human memories added into the system, the less the base level programming from the Mimic AI is in charge. M2 continues their journey outside. We see an alligator attacking a baby owl. This baby owl, as we will later see, is David. We save it from the alligator and then start to feed it, pet it, play with it, take care of it, in a babysitter as well as a mothering way. We chase a bear away from a house in the woods. The house is the home of an old woman who wants us to fix 3 masks: Freddy, Bonnie, and Foxy. The old woman's head looks like a star, or the sun. We saw a note in the beginning of the game asking the Moon to bring back the sun. This sun symbol also appears above F10 when Arnold speaks to her at the end of Secret of the Mimic. This is when it asks us to go save David. The sun is symbolic of Fiona. The sun is Fiona, and the Moon is babysitter.
That's as clear as I can make it.
Fiona is inside the house, working with Fazbear characters, with a bear outside. I think this house is the Proto-Freddy's you find underneath the Costume Manor. The bear outside the house is the big Freddy head in the basement. Fiona being inside, working on masks, is just F10 being in the actual Freddy's, with the unfinished Freddy animatronics around her. While there might be symbolism here, I think this is just bashing us over the head with Sun being F10. I have a whole bit I discuss in my video on what CRMN_INST means in Sister Location, where I talk about cool hills. When game developers make a video game and want you to climb a hill, they might put a sign down that says, "Cool hill ahead." But if they give the player enough freedom, the player might approach the hill from the other side, climb it of their own volition, and then come down the hill and see the sign that says "Cool hill ahead." What some players do is they see the sign and go, "Oh, well, I've already seen one cool hill. This must mean there's an even cooler hidden hill around here." And then they begin a fool's errand to find a hill that's not there. I think that Sun being F10 is a cool hill. We solve it ourselves by looking at what's in front of us in the game. Big Top tells us the sun went away at Fall Fest. The sun appears above M10 in the main game. The sun asks us to fix David the same way F10 does. So when we get this 4th piece of Sun is Fiona symbolism, instead of going, "Ah yes, The developers put this here because it's possible a player might see this before they meet F10 later. And if you don't listen to every single piece of lore you find in the game, this might be the introduction to the concept of Fiona working on Fazbear things. Some people might instead go, well, we already found out that Fiona is Sun, therefore this must be even deeper, more cryptic symbolism. And I don't think it is. I think that this building is just Moon.exe's depiction of Proto-Freddy's. Sadly, there's only one cool hill on this moon. When we fix the masks, we're forced to look at the table. When we finish fixing them, Sun gives us an owl mask. When we go back to standing in the full room proper, the baby owl is gone. Sun says it flew away. Now we have to put this baby owl mask on to get past Moon. I believe this is the step in which M2 begins to embody David. The babysitter-ness and the Fiona-ness have become overshadowed by the David-ness as we put on the mask, and thus we purge babysitter from our system by scaring away Moon. There's an odd indication here. Sun says the owl just flew away, but the sight of the owl makes the moon cry. If we inspected the oven before obtaining the owl mask, it says it's cold. If we inspect it afterwards, it says it's cooking something that smells like chicken. Did Sun remove the baby owl's face, give us it as a mask, and then cook the owl while we weren't looking? No. Behind these lockers in the security room in Proto-Freddy's is a roller coaster track that goes to Edwin's house. Above the track is a glimpse into the orange goo that's present throughout the game, powering devices, resting inside of barrels, inside pipes and the floor. This conductor goo is, as I've said, likely full of agony. If anything in this area is symbolic of fire, it's this goo furnace next to Fiona. It also can't be overlooked that constantly, throughout the entire game and Moon.exe, we are reminded that Fiona burned to death at Fall Fest. Also, the sun is fire. The thing that smells like chicken in the oven is not what many people believe, the baby owl. It's Chica. It's Fiona. The orange goo, the furnace, is the agony over Fiona's death, and Fiona is symbolized by Chica. The factory is producing Fiona agony. That's a very important part of how the Fiona bot got possessed by her in the first place. Again, I've discussed that in previous videos in this series. Sun says the owl flew away because Sun thinks he can come back. Sun Fiona wouldn't say he's dead, she'd say, oh, he went away, but he can come back. In fact, you can be him, M2. She gives M2 the owl mask so that M2 can take on David's persona. When we scare Moon away, we're purging Moon from M2, allowing David to come to the forefront. I know it's very popular right now to assign Edwin as the symbolism of what Nightlight Moon is. And I think the key piece of evidence to disprove that is this line when you get the mask. The moon will now think you are the baby owl. Edwin never thinks M2 is David. Even as he's dying at the end of the game, he calls it M2. In fact, he refutes to F10 that it could ever be David. But behaving like David would convince M1. If Moon is anyone, it's M1. But it can't be the part of M1 that's Fiona because the sun is Fiona. Which is why I assert that the moon is what remains of M1 when Fiona is removed, which is the babysitter. I know other people have many ideas about this, but I think it's fairly clear that we're getting more Fiona died in a fire imagery, more Fiona is Chica imagery, more Fiona bot did not consider David to be dead because she knows he can come back to life as a robot the way that she did, isms, and more the moon is not Edwin evidence. A lot of people don't look at the evidence that way, but I think that's what the game is saying. We then travel through a cave with areas that correspond to different parts of the factory. We see a pile of rocks that cries. We break a crystal. We see a Goonies-inspired pirate ship and go behind the waterfall. We end up with pieces of a moon statue. This is not Moon, M-O-O-N capital M Moon Nightlight Moon. This is a moon jester, with a crescent-shaped head. If Moon is M1, I see it perfectly likely that this moon thing is M2, M2's body. When we construct the statue, adding a head and arms, we are constructing the body that M2 will inhabit. Remember, Edwin built M2 attacked it, destroyed its legs, and then M2 rebuilt its own legs. Here, M2 is constructing everything beside its own legs, into the shape of a moon. If Fiona is symbolized as the sun, then Edwin would likely be symbolized as a moon. Not nightlight, but a moon. And so this moment is likely correlating with when Edwin beat up the M2 endoskeleton. This is when Edwin's agony enters into the equation. Upon completion of the statue, we are now the M2 from the audio log at the end of the game. We have remnants of the original Babysitter AI mimic program, parts of Fiona, the owl mask, which is parts of David, and now Edwin's agony. We started as a copy of M1, that's Fiona and the Babysitter. We've purged Babysitter and gained the owl mask, and now we've assembled Moon. We are David by way of Fiona and Edwin, the way that a child is themselves by way of their mother and father. We are David, taught by our parents. We are then engulfed in white, and appear in Murray's Costume Manor in the Welcome Showroom. Mr. Helpful tells us important information about ourselves. You rebuilt yourself, but now you are split in two, sun and moon, destruction and life. We, M2, in the factory, post leaving Edwin to die, are split into two beings spiritually. The gift from the sun, the owl mask, is our good. The influence of the moon, the reconstructed statue, is our bad. In the real world, M2 stomps around the building, taking over Jackie, Big Top, Dolly, and Chica. Moon is in the real world, destruction. In the game world, M2 walks around that same building, bringing peace to Jackie, Big Top, Dolly, and Chica. Sun is in the game world, peace. There are two halves of M2's consciousness, one on the surface in the endo, and one underneath, playing Moon.exe. There's an old proverb that goes, "Inside you are two wolves fighting, a good wolf and a bad wolf. Which will win? The one you feed." And so playing the game is feeding the good wolf, while Arnold does battle with the bad wolf. No, not yet. We're going to get to that in the next episode, actually. When we fail or do a wrong turn in Moon.exe, Nightlight appears and pushes us out of the world.
Pushes you out of the world?
What
does that mean?
the
I believe this refers to, like, when you go out of bounds in a video game and you just fall forever into the void. We are lost in the game. Our consciousness is now trapped in Moon.exe. Without the good half, evil M2 will stomp around forevermore, destroying the factory. But if we make the correct choices, we Undertale pacifist run our way past the four characters who, in the real world, M2 is using for evil. Then we come to the surface. We suck Jackie into a boot, because Jack in the Boxes are derived from Jack in the Boots, which comes from a story from when someone trapped the devil in a boot. Jack being another name for the devil. So putting Jackie in a boot is basically putting her back where she belongs. We give Big Top a ticket, and he powers down. We fix all of Dolly's patients for her. We give Chica a cake. We've pacifist ran past the bosses, while real-world Moon M2 is genocide running through them. I think the really important thing here to note is that we're not just showing peace to random characters, we're doing it to the same characters being affected in the real world. When the M2 Endo inhabits these characters, he's also taking a bit of their personas into himself. That's what the Mimic does. So while David is trying to claw his way to the top to gain control, he's now being pushed back by Jackie, Big Top, Dolly, and Chica. I think the reason that Moon.exe mirrors the Happiest Day minigames in FNAF 3 is because we're removing these personas from M2. He's not Jackie anymore once we trap her. He's not Dolly anymore once we appease her. We're removing these other personas. The reason these four characters are here, and not any of the other costumes that he wears in the game, are because those are cloth suits, and these are metal. And Remnant needs metal. Chica has roller skates, don't at me. So once we've purged the costumes that M2 has worn from its system, Moon, Jackie, Big Top, Dolly, and Chica, we come to David's room. Now the only things inside us are Sun Fiona, Crescent Moon Edwin, and Owl Mask David. We are M2. We've reached the final stop to bring David to the surface. We place his soul, his memory, and the agony of his death into these chests for him to find. Then we enter the closet. In the real world, Arnold finds his way into David's bedroom. He places the tiger on a plinth. M2 crawls out of that closet, free of all of its costumes. This is the battle for M2's consciousness. We play a recording. Edwin speaks, then F10, not Fiona, but F10 specifically, talks. This calms M2 until he shuts down. We're able to plug in the information we got from playing Moon.exe into M2. The information that was uploaded to our data diver is now uploaded into M2. The information of what we put into those chests. David takes full control of M2, picking up his tiger and happily going to bed. He's no longer scared of what might come to the surface if he gives up control of the body, because they've all been purged. All that remains is David. David has completed his possession of the M2 Endo, and is now just a child. This is the happy ending. The ending where the good and the bad inside of him, the love of a mother and the agony of a father, unite and synthesize into one normal child, purged of all stolen robotic personas. He is now only David. This is the happy ending. The ending that canonically does not happen, because this is FNAF and the good ending never happens. That is Moon.exe. It's a battle between the personas and forces inside of M2, trying to come to the surface to take over the physical body. It's M2's journey to become David and listen to the part of him that is good and not evil. It almost mirrors the ending of Sister Location, where Mike is told to take what is bad and leave what is good from inside Baby. Take away Baby and leave Elizabeth. Although I think he's being tricked, but whatever. Because this is the ending that brings peace, this is likely similar to the ending that will happen at the end of the series. I think showing us that innocent David can be brought to the forefront of M2's consciousness if shown love, and then having the story end with Gregory killing the Mimic with a forklift, would be bad. Also, our fight to stay awake as M2 mirrors Arnold's fight to stay awake after a 36-hour shift. That's how it ties into the theme I discussed in my first 2 videos in this series. Now, I'm sure there's questions that you guys have. What about the pond? Isn't that Old Man Consequence's lake? Possibly, but I'm not sure. I'm wary of taking an image as commonplace as a pond and going, oh my god, it's the same pond. It's also unclear if OMC is a human character, and thus if they'd be dead at this point in the timeline. Like, if Old Man Consequences is Henry, he can't be dead yet, because it's only 1979. Although we do find Foxy in that pond, and Old Man Consequences might be a fox. I don't know. What about Monty attacking the baby owl? In addition to the main animatronic band of Foxy, Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica, at the end of the game in the storybook, we're introduced to a puppy and an alligator. In the Proto-Freddy's building, we find Monty and Bub the dog, both as Springlock suits. These will likely be tied to characters in ways that we can't possibly figure out now. The way that Henry is tied to Fredbear, William to Spring Bonnie, and Fiona to Chica, the future games will probably give us the identities of Monty, Bub, and Foxy, if Foxy isn't already supposed to be understood to be Edwin. But Gibby, there's only one Mimic Endo in the file of the games. Why, you said this whole video there's an M1 Endo, that's not true. It's true that in the file of the games, there's only one endoskeleton. I believe this is simply a resource and time-saving measure. We only see what would be the M1 Endo in one circumstance, and that's in this home video, showing Fiona possessing M1, and we don't see it from the waist down. M2, or the full Endo that we see in the games files, has the legs that Edwin never gave it, has the legs it gave itself. So, because they're supposed to be identical from the waist up, Steelwool could use that same model for Fiona's M1 as long as it didn't show her legs, which it doesn't. That does not mean there aren't 2 Endos, it just means they didn't need to make 2 Endos to depict what's supposed to be depicted in the game. But Gibby, what does this have to do with the rest of the franchise? What does this mean for the overall lore? What about God David? What about Sun and Moon and Eclipse? What about William taking over Murray's old house? What about Fiona becoming Mexis? What about F10N4 being Elite Speak anagram for Afton? Well, viewer, those questions and what Secret of the Mimic means for the FNAF timeline will be answered in the finale to this series. We've covered Layer 1 of the game, Arnold's story, Layer 2 of the game, Edwin's story as implied by the audio logs, and now Layer 3 of the game, the cryptic symbolism within Moon.exe and the intentions of the spirits. And so, in the finale, which should be out soon, we will discuss how Secret of the Mimic utterly changes the story of FNAF forever. You should subscribe if you want to see that, because it's about to get completely insane. Thank you for watching. Be sure to be nice to each other in the comments, consider supporting the creators you admire, never lose sight of the things that are important to you. Remember that Freddy's stands for Friendly, Respectful Engagement, Discussion, and Discourse Yield Success. I would like to thank the Unwithered Truth and T-Dreads for their help making this video, and I hope you check out their videos about Secret of the Mimic. Moon.exe? You mean Mimic 01 X-Form Endoskeleton? You mean Moon is M1 confirmed?